The God of War franchise has a sprawling timeline that interweaves its great Greek tragedy across 9 games and 2 wildly distinct mythologies. And while I'd love to say it's a relatively simple chronology to untangle, the point is, it's not, hence why I'm making this video. And with God of War Ragnarok set to further slide the franchise's anti-hero Kratos into the mythological mire, what better time to dive back into the Ghost of Sparta's saga of gods and monsters. Hey, my name's Adam, this is my big old board of gods and titans that likely won't see the end of this video, and this is the God of War timeline fully explained. Our timeline kicks off with a healthy stab of backstory courtesy of the monochrome flashbacks from God of War Ghost of Sparta. Here we catch up with Kratos spending some quality time with the family, and back in the day that meant kicking the everlasting crap out of your brother. Side note, watching this back you might assume that this fella here is Kratos because of, well, the distinctive red markings. But you would be wrong, dear viewer. This lad here is Deimos, Kratos' brother and perhaps the main catalyst for our anti-hero's violent journey through Greek and Norse mythology. You see, these flashbacks showcase the 2 brothers training to become Spartan warriors, only their sparring is cut short by the untimely arrival of a pair of Greek gods, Ares the god of war and Athena the god of wisdom. They're here in Olympus business taking care of a little prophecy that predicts the downfall of Zeus and co. Turns out that the end of the Greek gods will come at the hands of a marked mortal, and Ares and Athena zero in on Deimos and his distinctive birthmarks. They nab the tiny Spartan lad and begin to make their exit, only for our good pal Kratos to stand in their way. For his insolence, Ares straight up sucker punches him in the face, leaving a nasty scar over his eye. And if it weren't for the mercy of Athena, Ares would have killed Kratos right there and then, a decision that ironically seals the God of War's fate later on. And in his brother's honour, Kratos tattoos himself in the image of his brother's scars, which, you know, might just mean that prophecy is back on the cards. Through flashbacks interwoven into the story of the original God of War, we learn that Kratos becomes a captain in the Spartan army, in charge of a horde of rampaging murderous soldiers, and Kratos himself has become something of a bloodthirsty, power-hungry warlord, ever pushing to extend the boundaries of the Spartan Empire. To the disdain of his family, Kratos pursues his bloodlust until he meets his match in the form of a mammoth barbarian army. He blindly charges right on into the fray, and to be honest, it doesn't go all that well. Facing certain defeat, he calls upon the God of War Ares, must have forgotten that encounter with his brother, eh? To help him defeat his enemies and push for victory. Ares, being the self-serving bastard that he is, agrees on the condition that Kratos swear loyalty to him. And Kratos, caught in an extremely desperate moment, signs on the metaphorical dotted line and the deal is sealed, as the iconic blades of chaos are chained to Kratos' arms.
Once attached, the chains remained so, chained and seared to the flesh, a part of the bearer's body, a permanent reminder of Kratos' pledge.
And from that moment on, Kratos wages war on behalf of Ares, striking down all foes in his path at the whim of the God of War. This relentless warpath eventually leads him to a village occupied by worshippers of Athena. Kratos hacks and slashes his way through the villagers, blindly murdering them left, right and centre, but unbeknownst to Kratos is the fact that Ares has led the Spartan captain right into a trap. In his blind rampage, Kratos kills his own wife and daughter, and in that horrific moment he snaps out of his bloodthirsty rampage.
The image of his 2 final victims would stay with him for all his days.
Ares believes that this key act would turn Kratos into the perfect warrior, but instead Kratos renounces Ares and vows to get revenge on the God of War. As he mourns his wife and child, the oracle of the destroyed village curses Kratos and fuses the ashes of his dead family to his body, turning his skin pale white and branding him as the Ghost of Sparta. Damn, this franchise is cold. With his oath to Ares broken, Kratos becomes a marked man, in more ways than one. God of War Ascension sees our tormented Spartan hunted down by the 3 Furies for breaking his oath to a god. This ancient retelling of classic 90s action of The Fugitive, which is possibly a connection I've made just because I watched that recently, sees Kratos team up with a man named Orcos, who we learn is the son of Ares and Alecto, one of the Furies. Far from the perfect warrior Ares was hoping for, Orcos is cast aside and takes up the role of the Furies' Oathkeeper. While the main narrative is quite slight and really just a warm-up for the inevitable Kratos versus the Furies fight, we do learn a few new facts about Kratos' bond to Ares. For starters, Ascension reveals the reason behind Ares' desire to control Kratos.
Ares molded you to take down the very walls of Olympus.
You see, it turns out that Zeus has forbidden the gods from waging war on one another, and as a result, this rule bars Ares from seizing power on Mount Olympus. Ares' way of getting around this is to groom the ultimate warrior with 3 tests that would bind said warrior to his demands. And one of these tests turned out to be Kratos' unwitting murder of his family. Either way, back to God of War Ascension's main plot. Long story short, Kratos kills the Furies. Oh, you were expecting more? Well, poor old Orcos also doesn't make it past the credits of Ascension. The unlucky lad is still the Furies' Oathkeeper, including Kratos' oath to Ares, and with him still alive, Kratos will never be able to take revenge on the God of War. Orcos literally begs for death from Kratos, claiming it will bring them both release from the tyranny of Ares. Kratos reluctantly obliges and puts the Oathkeeper out of his misery, thus setting in motion his path towards redemption.
With the death of Orcos, the blood oath to Ares was finally broken.
While his bond to Ares might have been broken, Kratos is still very much in debt to the rest of the gods, and that's where we catch up with him in the PSP adventure Chains of Olympus. About 5 years into his servitude, Kratos is kicking up a storm in the city of Attica, where he offs both the Persian king and a big off basilisk. As he's starting to feel too old for all this god shite, Kratos spies the sun vanishing from the sky, leaving the world in total darkness. Not content with simply calling this nighttime, Kratos investigates and discovers that Helios, the god of the sun, has been kidnapped, allowing his sneaky colleague Morpheus, the god of dreams, to slide on into Olympus and put the gods into a deep, cozy sleep. Kratos traces the whereabouts of Helios to the underworld by using his steeds, the horses that carry the sun chariot across the sky. Down in the underworld, Kratos discovers that the Titan Atlas has escaped from his chains, which is odd because he's bloody massive. But even more intriguing for Kratos is that he encounters visions of his daughter Calliope. Naturally, this vision is too good to be true, and is a test of Kratos' will created by Persephone, goddess of the underworld and embittered wife of Hades. Kratos once again falls right into the trap, and is reunited with his daughter on the fields of Elysium.
Calliope!
Father?
My child.
Why did you go?
I am here now, child.
And it's here where, surprise surprise, Persephone reveals that it was her plan to kidnap Helios alongside the escaped Atlas, in a bid to get back at the gods for trapping her down in the land of the dead. Kratos then coldly turns his back on his daughter in surely one of the most bizarre uses of a QuickTime event in all of gaming.
Father, please!
All in service of his pursuit of the goddess of the underworld. Kratos eventually catches up to Persephone, brutally murdering her and putting a stop to her plans to seize power in Olympus, which is already establishing itself as a solid motive for this franchise's antagonists. Which marks the first time I get to use this flashy board. Good riddance. He then escapes the underworld aboard Helios' steeds, and absolutely exhausted from the efforts of his adventures in the land of the dead, falls from the chariot. He's rescued from certain death by the reawakened gods Athena and Helios, who leave him dozing on a cliffside overlooking the Aegean Sea. All of which finally lands us at the very first God of War game. Set a decade into Kratos' servitude to the gods of Olympus, the original God of War kicks off in suitably epic fashion. Absolutely exhausted at the relentlessness of his deeds across the last decade, Kratos seeks out Athena in search of a get-out clause from his service to the gods. The goddess of wisdom points him in the direction of Athens, where he's finally tasked with defeating Ares. Kratos arrives at Athens and meets the Oracle, who vows to help Kratos defeat the rampaging God of War by pointing him towards the one ancient MacGuffin that will actually help defeat a god, Pandora's box. Kratos learns from Athena that the box can be found in the Temple of Pandora, which, naturally, is located in one of the most ridiculously isolated spots you can find, atop the Titan Kronos, who is cursed to wander a desert for eternity. Kratos, not one to back down to an insurmountable challenge, ventures to the temple, which is far from the cheeriest place in ancient Greece, and becomes the first mortal to ever reach Pandora's box.
So, you think you can conquer the Temple of the Gods, do you? It's never been done, you know.
A fact that Ares seemingly clues into the moment it happens, and from right bang in the middle of the destruction he's wreaking in Athens, Ares lobs a javelin-shaped column all the way to wherever the hell the Temple of Pandora is, and scores a bullseye right in the middle of Kratos' chest. I mean, you gotta respect that coordination. A platoon of harpies turn up and escort the box back to Ares, while Kratos slowly bleeds out in the company of the memories of his wretched life. And so Kratos dies. Instead of bringing this timeline to a close, however, the Ghost of Sparta plunges deep down into the underworld yet again, but this time he's meant to be there. His trip is incredibly brief. He literally climbs his way out on a handy rope that appears before his eyes courtesy of a mysterious gravedigger back in Athens, as that's how death works in this fantasy version of ancient Greece, I guess. Anyway, for the convenience of the story, Kratos is exactly back where he needs to be. He finds Ares screaming at the sky, cursing Zeus for his part in creating Kratos.
Zeus!
And for this insolence, Zeus gifts Kratos with a timely thunderbolt, which he flings right at the god of war, making him drop Pandora's box. And when opened, aside from containing all the horrible shit like plagues and death that myths tell us were in the box, Kratos simply turns into a giant version of himself, so he can go mano a mano with Ares. And not one to be outdone, Ares turns into a spider? Okay. After Ares tortures Kratos with more visions of his dead wife and child, the game turns into a full-on side-on fighting game, complete with health bars and everything. It's awesome. Kratos eventually wins the fight and sends a giant sword right through the god of war. Which means I can mark you off, OG god of war. So, Ares dies and blows up like an ancient Greek nuke, which rids Kratos of his nemesis, but not of the horrible memories plaguing his mind. Despite his deeds, the gods wipe Kratos' sinful slate clean, but leave him with his nightmares. At his wit's end, Kratos seeks release by flinging himself from atop a cliff overlooking the Aegean. But the gods even interfere in this act, instead raising him up to Olympus itself to take the vacant seat as the god of war.